Good afternoon. Welcome to News Plus here on Loveworld USA. I'm TGK Andre. Let's take a quick look at the top headline stories this afternoon. Executive order to require voter ID nationwide underway. Trump clashes with Senate blue slip tradition as GOP chair defends practice. Chicago mayor signs order to resist potential Trump crackdown as feud with Pritzker intensifies. FBI probes surge of campus swatting, hoaxes after first week chaos. And China and India pledge to be partners and not rivals. These and more stories in the news. President Donald Trump said late Saturday, he plans to sign an executive order to require voter ID nationwide, restricting mail-in voting to the very ill and faraway military while mandating paper ballots only. The move follows an earlier order on election rules that was partly blocked in April by U.S. District Judge Colleen Collier-Cotley, who ruled the president lacks authority to impose voter ID requirements. In her opinion, Collier-Cotley wrote that the Constitution assigns primary control over elections to the Congress and the states, and that no statute lets the president bypass Congress by executive order. Voter ID remains broadly popular. A Gallup poll taken before the 2024 elections found 84% of the U.S. adults favor requiring identification to vote, and 83% support proof of citizenship for first-time registrants. Watch this.
President Trump wrote on social media that he plans to sign an executive order to implement voter ID nationwide. He also railed against voting by mail. Trump spoke on the issue earlier this month in the Oval Office.
We're going to end mail-in voting. It's time that the Republicans get tough and stop it.
His pledge comes as he faces a number of legal setbacks after a judge blocked the Trump administration from expanding fast-track deportations, and a federal appeals judge has put his emergency powers to implement tariffs in jeopardy. His planned immigration enforcement operations in Chicago, which are likely to start later this week, are also leading to a showdown between federal authorities and police in that city.
Again, this is a simple situation in which the president is going after something that should be common sense. In many other countries, they do simple paper ballots. People come in, they cast their votes, they go home, and they watch the ballots get counted. This way, there's no electronic interference. There's no claim of ballots being adjusted in the mail. There's so much less to criticize. I mean, on both sides, there were claims of election fraud. When Trump won in 2024, there were claims of election fraud. When Biden won in 2020, there were claims of election fraud. Because of course, you have the Dominion voter system, you have the electronic system, which is open to manipulation, as has been shown, publicly. There was a demonstration on an old Dominion voter machine that showed that it could be manipulated. But if you want to get rid of all of the speculation, simply just make it simple paper ballots and make sure, again, simply because only United States citizens can vote, so it's even more of a formality, just make sure that there's proof that there's a citizen before they can register to vote. Anybody who supports the Constitution and wants to uphold the rule of law, I feel, has to agree. What do you think? President Donald Trump escalated attacks on the Senate's blue slip custom, blaming it for stalled confirmations of his picks for judges, U.S. attorneys, and U.S. marshals in the Democratic-led states. Calling the practice unconstitutional, Trump urged Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley from Iowa to scrap it and even threatened a lawsuit. The White House accused Senate Democrats of historic obstruction and said the impasse is hurting the public. Grassley and several Republicans pushed back, arguing blue slips, home state senator to sign off on certain nominees, are a century-old tool that ensures consultation and viable confirmations. As chairman, I set President Trump's nominations up for success, not failure, Grassley said on social media. Senator Tom Tillis from North Carolina called efforts to end blue slips short-sighted, warning they would let Democrats force through extremist nominees in red states. Amid the standoff, the administration has leaned on interim and acting appointments, drawing legal scrutiny. In New Jersey, federal judges declined to extend interim U.S. Attorney Alina Habba. Subsequent maneuvers to reinstall her were ruled unconstitutional, and the administration has appealed. Similar temporary arrangements are in place for other Trump picks, underscoring the limits of end runs around Senate confirmation. Blue slips have persisted across administrations. Joe Biden secured dozens from the opposing party, and Trump's first term saw broad success with U.S. attorney confirmations. This time, Trump has 4 opposing party blue slips, while Democrats have withheld others, including for former SEC Chair Jerry Clayton. Even some Trump allies acknowledge the custom's staying power, calling it sacred china senators are unlikely to surrender. Let's take a look.
I think I'm going to be filing a lawsuit pretty soon, and I think we're going to be very successful in it. We're going to be filing it through the Department of Justice. That's going to happen. And we're also going to be filing a lawsuit on blue slipping. You know, blue slips make it impossible for me as president to appoint a judge or a U.S. attorney because they have a gentleman's agreement. It's nothing memorialized. It's a gentleman's agreement that's about 100 years old, where if you have a president like a Republican and if you have a Democrat senator, that senator can stop you from appointing a judge or a U.S. attorney. In particular, those are the two, I guess anything, but those are the two that are very important. So Jay Clayton just got approved, and he's in, but he didn't get approved by the senators. He got approved by the court system in New York, which was a great thing. And I had a big victory in New York, I might add. I saved myself $500 million with a fake, corrupt attorney general, a really corrupt person with a corrupt judge who was disgraceful, and they're being mauled right now by everybody.
It's very intriguing to see a president go time and time again against what we would call unspoken rules. Because again, constitutionally, there's no power that is vested in a blue slip. In the Constitution, it doesn't state that a home state senator has to approve or give a recommendation or an approval for a nominee. It's just, again, it's an unspoken rule or an unspoken custom. And Trump, now knowing that, is challenging it. So what we've seen Trump do a lot in his second term is challenge a lot of the norms, challenge a lot of the unspoken rules and customs of political bureaucracy in D.C. And again, like we said here on the story, it's even affecting the Republicans, because even they, as much as Democrats have been surprised by Trump's maneuvers, although it's hard to be surprised, I mean, this is his second term, and we've seen that Trump is willing, when push comes to shove, to do what it takes to get the job done. We're even now seeing his Republicans, or his fellow comrades in arms with his agenda, even surprised, by his push against blue slips. But that just goes to show you how much Trump wants to get things done, that he's even willing to defy, conventional political norms just to make sure that he gets what he needs in this administration. President Donald Trump escalated his clash with Illinois leaders after another violent weekend in Chicago, warning Governor J.B. Pritzker to straighten it out fast, or we're coming. The broadside came as 6 people were killed and more than 24 wounded in shootings, and weeks after Trump federalized policing in Washington, D.C. and mobilized roughly 2,000 National Guard troops there. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson on Friday signed the Protecting Chicago Initiative, an executive order directing city agencies on how to respond to potential federal actions, including immigration enforcement. We do not need nor want an unconstitutional and illegal military occupation of our city, Johnson said. The order reiterates city rules requiring body cameras and visible identification for officers and bans mask wearing. It also bars joint patrols between local police and federal agents. Pritzker called Trump's threatened deployments unconstitutional and a dangerous power grab, accusing the White House of manufacturing a crisis. Johnson said the city would focus on educating residents about their rights and maintaining existing sanctuary policies in a city where more than 1 in 5 residents is an immigrant. The White House dismissed Johnson's move as a publicity stunt, arguing Democratic officials should focus on crime rather than criticize the president. Trump has repeatedly labeled Chicago a mess and says a federal surge of agents and potentially troops could follow if local leaders continue to refuse assistance. Watch this.
We do not want to see tanks in our streets. We do not want to see families ripped apart.
Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson vowing pushback against White House plans to send ICE agents or even National Guard troops into Chicago. taking a page from Trump and signing this executive order, largely symbolic, requiring federal agents wear body cameras and uniforms and show their faces, declaring Chicago police will remain locally controlled.
We may see militarized immigration enforcement. We may also see National Guard troops. This president continues to go well beyond the bounds of the Constitution.
Again, it's the ice water theory. And hopefully, these institutions, these organizations, these cities, these local governments are waking up to what Trump is trying to do. I mean, we saw in DC a few days ago, there were viral images of National Guardsmen picking up trash around the city. Trump is seeing, hey, there is a problem and people aren't exhausting enough resources and solutions to find an answer. I'm going to do what I can do in my power through executive orders, through control of the executive branch to fix these issues. So yes, of course, I mean, we saw DC have a streak of no murders. Of course, that streak was unfortunately snapped. But of course, as the National Guard was there, we also saw them picking up trash, attending to civil matters, showing that, again, Trump's plan and Trump's ideologies is to use whatever resources are available to him to improve the country while he's there in his second term. Chicago has crime issues. That cannot be ignored. Their crime rates are among the highest in the country. So it's not like Trump is just randomly picking on Trump is randomly picking on cities that might have Democratic leadership. There are issues, and he's trying to tell them, sort it out, go tougher on crime because it's affecting your citizens, because they're also my citizens as well, or I will handle it myself personally with the power vested in the executive branch by the United States Constitution. Literally, when you look at all of these situations that he's handled, it all boils down to the same thing. Money's being funneled out of the country, taxpayer dollars are being funneled out or being wasted, crime is on the rise, immigration isn't being handled, and Trump is saying to all these situations, I've given these different departments, I've given these different states, these different institutions the ability to handle it, and they haven't done so. Now, because again, these concerns my constituents, because of course we have the state and the federal level, I'm going to be the one to handle it since they don't want to handle it. Look at it and compare. You can see it for yourself. That's clearly his modus operandi, and we're seeing it in action now. The FBI says it is investigating a nationwide spike in swatting calls that falsely reported active shooters at colleges, prompting lockdowns, evacuations, and heavy police presences during the first week of classes. At least 10 universities were hit by coordinated hoaxes. All alerts were later deemed unfounded. Federal officials say they're working with local agencies and take the threat seriously because such calls put bystanders and officers at risk and drain resources. Retired FBI agents and campus safety experts noted that responders must treat every report as real until it's disproven. Incidents were reported at Villanova University, the University of Arkansas, the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, the University of Texas at San Antonio, Kansas State, Iowa State, the University of South Carolina, the University of Colorado Boulder, the University of New Hampshire, and Northern Arizona University. Several campuses issued shelter-in-place orders, canceled classes, or evacuated buildings. No credible threats or injuries were found. Campus leaders condemned the cruel hoaxes, and some governors directed state police to assist investigations. Safety analysts warned that even false alarms leave lingering psychological effects on students, staff, and parents as agencies work to trace the origins of the call. Let's take a look.
It's my strongest desire that no state, no community, no school ever experiences a day like this.
2 children were killed and more than a dozen others injured after a gunman opened fire during a morning mass at a Catholic school in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Police say the shooter took his own life moments later. It's the first real active shooter situation after a series of hoax calls made it to at least a dozen college campuses around the nation in the past week. From the University of Arkansas to CU Boulder in Colorado.
It's just scary. Like, I was just walking around and all of a sudden I see a bunch of cop cars.
Thousands of students are receiving alerts.
Especially when you put the context of what happened in Minnesota, the shootings at the church and the school. I mean, when you look at that in the light, it only makes these hoaxes, these swatting claims. And of course, when we say swatting, to explain to the viewers at home, swatting is a term that gained reference in the online streamer community or the online influencer community, where a fan or a detractor of an online influencer would gain access to their address somehow, and they would call the FBI or they would call the police hotline and claim that there was a hostage being held, or that, you know, somebody was, again, making terroristic threats, and they would give them their address, typically leading to them sending a SWAT presence. So they're breaking down their doors, they're throwing smoke grenades, they're coming in weapons locked, you know, disrupting the influencer's day, their stream, or whatever they intended to do. People have been swatted in their cars, people have been shot. You know, again, people have turned into victims because of the situation for something that they absolutely did not commit that could literally be seen on streaming video evidence. So when we say swatting, it means that, again, false claims are being made to increase paranoia and, of course, to directly affect the lives of whoever the targets are. So, of course, given America's history with school shootings, this is truly a heartless endeavor, and the fact that it's coordinated, especially in line with a mass shooting that just happened at a school, makes it even worse. Truly, we hope that, again, things can go back to normal and these local investigators and the local police departments can hopefully work together to get these swatting calls under command. We will take a break, and when we return, more news will follow. Don't go anywhere.
In 1 Billion Homes Project is all about making sure the voice of our man of God, Pastor Chris Oyakhilome, arrives exactly when someone needs it the most. It's a global campaign to saturate the world with the gospel of our Lord Jesus like never before.
The gospel is going to go into places that it never was before, into disciplines and areas that it never was before, and establish a higher way of life.
Make a global impact today with your sponsorship of Pastor Chris in 1 Billion Homes Project. For every home you sponsor, you send the gospel where it's never gone. You become the reason someone receives life, a second chance, and finds Jesus. Through the dynamic Pastor Chris in 1 Billion Homes Project, we've been able to expand our global mission, touching more souls, more regions, and producing a wave of powerful testimonies from people whose lives have been forever changed. Your financial support as a Loveworld USA partner is not just generous, it's supernatural power for global impact. Let's keep sending the gospel into every home through the Pastor Chris in 1 Billion Homes Project. Sign up today and sponsor any of the following categories.
It's time for you to give the right sacrifice, the right seed, because it's time for you to get the right harvest.
You can sponsor Pastor Chris in 1 Billion Homes Project by calling or going on our website now. Sign up to be Pastor Chris in 1 Billion Homes Project partner today. God bless you.
Welcome back. Chinese President Xi Jinping and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi met on the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in Tianjin, marking Modi's first visit to China in 7 years. Both leaders said trust between the two countries is deepening, with Xi calling for the neighbors to be partners, not rivals, and Modi describing an atmosphere of peace and stability. Modi announced that direct flights between India and China, halted since deadly border clashes in 2020, will resume, without giving a timeline. The pledge signals a tentative thaw after years of tensions along the Himalayan frontier, as both sides urged a long-term strategic approach to ties. The gathering, attended by more than 20 world leaders, including Russia's Vladimir Putin, comes amid escalating trade frictions with the U.S. President Donald Trump has imposed steep tariffs on Indian goods over Delhi's purchases of Russian oil, while Putin faces the threat of further sanctions tied to the war in Ukraine. Founded in 2001 by China, Russia, and 4 Central Asian states, the SCO now counts 10 members, with additional observers and dialogue partners. Tianjin has staged extensive security and public displays for the summit, drawing large crowds even as authorities urge residents to limit movement during visiting motorcades. Watch this.
Russian President Vladimir Putin made his second red carpet appearance this summer, the last one courtesy of Trump's warm welcome in Alaska just weeks ago. helpful validation for the Chinese leader Xi Jinping's long support of Putin. And with his Russian bear by his side, he then told India's leader, feeling the sting of Trump's tariffs, that with the world transforming, the Chinese dragon and Indian elephant should come together. A bear, a dragon and an elephant walk into a room, and the punchline is Xi Jinping's perfect photo op, along with a guest list of leaders, including Iran, Belarus, North Korea and Turkey. It's no surprise this gathering of the Shanghai Cooperation Council is being dubbed the Axis of Upheaval Summit.
I mean, now when you see this, it almost makes sense why Pakistan would nominate President Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, he's bringing countries together that have been at odds with each other over his tariffs. So, it's even an economic double entendre. Not only is he raising U.S. tariff revenue, but he's also finding a way to bring countries, as again we stated in the story, India and China hadn't had direct flights in 5 years. Now, because the tariffs are affecting both countries, they're coming together to thaw out their frozen relationship and deepen ties. So it's good to see, because again, we saw President Trump do it with NATO, that these policies are leading countries into a sense of rethinking what the status quo is concerning geopolitical relations. Because before, NATO was contributing about 1% of their annual budget to European defense. Now they upped that number to 5%. Without Trump reducing how much money he sent to NATO, that doesn't happen. So it's genuinely one of those situations where we're seeing Trump's policies, his international, his foreign policy, affect countries in second and third orders. So it's not just him doing it, it's him doing it, and you could say that, he's expecting this. It's also having ripples. So when I say second and third order, it goes that, if somebody pushes a cup of water that's on the table and the water spills to the floor, that's the first order. The second order is if somebody slips, that becomes the second order. So the person who pushed the cup, the water spilling became the first order and the person slipping became the second order. Their back hurting would become the third order. So it means that if somebody wanted to get somebody's back to hurt or somebody to slip, they would have to start with the first order, which is to push the cup. So when I talk about first, second, and third order consequences, it means that one action can cause a ripple effect to now cause multiple actions to maybe produce a desired or an unexpectedly desired outcome. So we're seeing Trump's foreign policy again take shape and cause ripples across the geopolitical world, usually for the better of these countries. We see NATO come to bond together because they had to go against the common enemy in Trump. We're seeing China and India come together because they're both facing tariffs. What's next? We'll see. And now we'll take a look at some of the stories that made the headlines this week. The White House is pressing Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook to step aside as she prepares a legal challenge to President Donald Trump's attempt to remove her from the central bank. Top economic advisor Kevin Hassett said Wednesday that in Cook's circumstance, he would take a leave of absence, calling it the honorable thing to do. The administration argues the president may dismiss a Fed governor for cause, a standard embedded in the Federal Reserve Act. Cook, who became the first black woman to serve on the Fed board in 2022, has been accused by Trump-appointed housing official of mortgage-related misrepresentations, allegations she denies. Her attorney, Ab Lowell, said Cook will soon file suit to block the removal, calling the president's action baseless and unlawful. The Federal Reserve said Cook, through counsel, has indicated she will seek a court ruling affirming her ability to continue serving as the Senate-confirmed governor while the dispute proceeds. The central bank also noted the statutory for-cause requirements that governs presidential removals from the board. The showdown could test the legal boundaries around Fed independence and presidential authority. If lower courts split or the stakes warrant, the case could ultimately land before the Supreme Court, with implications for how future administrations interact with the central bank. Watch this.
Comes to Fed Governor Lisa Cook, her lawyer has said that they're going to be filing a lawsuit challenging this legal action. What is your response? Are you prepared for a legal fight? And then a little bit more.
Oh, sure, always. You always have legal fights. Look, I had a legal fight that went on for years with crooked people, with very horrible people, people that have been found out now between John Ratcliffe and Tulsi and Pam, and I mean, the things that we found out, of course. It's a very, very sad group of people. But no, she seems to have had an infraction, and she can't have an infraction, especially that infraction, because she's in charge of, if you think about it, mortgages, and we need people that are 100% above board.
I feel like I'm almost repeating myself at this point. But again, I haven't seen a president in my time so crafty, I'd put it like that. Again, because time and time again, at every step and at every corner, we're seeing Trump circumvent bureaucracy. We're seeing him, undermine what we've considered political norm to get what he so desperately wants. This is a man who is focused and is willing to undo centuries, decades of U.S. political custom. Because again, we're seeing him trying to take control of the Federal Reserve, or trying to establish more power with the executive branch and Federal Reserve. Again, of course, we've seen and heard his feuds with Jerome Powell, calling for him to resign, and even publicly announcing that he's looking for ways to get him off the Federal Reserve Board, of course, as the chief of the Federal Reserve Board. Now we're seeing him take another swipe at the Federal Reserve through Fed Governor Lisa Cook. And I can tell you this for free, he's not done. By the end of the year, we're going to see Trump take more swipes at the Fed Reserve Board as he seeks to establish more power over the U.S. fiscal policy. Newly declassified documents indicate former President Barack Obama participated in high-level meetings that preceded and shaped the FBI's 2016 Trump-Russia investigation, known as Crossfire Hurricane. Records released by Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard and CIA Director John Ratcliffe include then CIA Director John Brennan's August 3, 2016 notes, summarizing intelligence that Hillary Clinton had allegedly approved a plan to tie Donald Trump to Russian interference. Obama has rejected claims he orchestrated the probe, calling them outrageous and pointing to long-standing findings that Russia sought to influence the 2016 election. The timeline outlined in the material shows the FBI opened Crossfire Hurricane on July 31, 2016, followed days later by Brennan's Oval Office briefing to Obama and senior officials. The CIA counterintelligence operational lead memo referencing Crossfire Hurricane was then sent to the FBI. Separately, newly declassified annex materials cite purported emails from figures linked to George Soros' Open Society Foundations, discussing pushing the Trump-Russia narrative. It is unclear whether those communications were part of the August 3rd briefing. After the election, Obama met President-elect Trump on November 10, 2016, and warned against appointing Michael Flynn as National Security Advisor. The classified records also detail a December 9th Situation Room meeting where principals agreed to pursue sanctions and produce a new intelligence community assessment on Russian activities. A December 8th presidential daily brief stated cyber actors did not alter U.S. vote outcomes, but assessed Russia likely aimed to undermine confidence. The FBI raised concerns about the draft before the broader assessment was finalized and released January 6, 2017. On January 5, 2017, Obama met with senior national security officials as then FBI Director James Comey described proceeding by the book and raised sharing sensitivity concerns about Flynn's contacts with the Russian ambassador, according to an email later written by National Security Advisor Susan Rice. The disclosures revived partisan disputes over the origins of the Russia probe and the extent of White House awareness, even as Obama allies say the documents do not undercut collusions and conclusions about Russian interference, and Trump allies argue they show political abuse of intelligence. Let's take a look.
Any of this new information implicates former President Obama in criminal behavior?
We have referred and will continue to refer all of these documents to the Department of Justice and the FBI to investigate the criminal implications of this.
For even former President Obama?
Correct. The evidence that we have found and that we have released directly point to President Obama leading the manufacturing of this intelligence assessment. There are multiple pieces of evidence and intelligence that confirm that fact.
We'll be right back with more news. Be sure to stay tuned.
It's easy to set up, quick to start, and packed with value. Smarter streaming starts here with the Alpha TV Stick. Just plug and stream anytime, anywhere. Discover a curated lineup of content designed to inspire, live broadcasts and global events, inspirational films and series, children's programming, healing and teaching sessions, all on demand. With millions of downloads worldwide, the Alpha TV app is transforming lives across the globe. And now, we're on a mission to reach 1 billion downloads of the Alpha TV app, and you can be part of it. Join the global wave with 1 billion Alpha TV app downloads worldwide. Bring the higher life into every home. Order your Alpha TV stick today and experience smarter streaming. Alpha, the higher life is here.
The detainee population at the Trump administration's Everglades detention complex, known as Alligator Alcatraz, has fallen by about half following a federal judge's order to wind down operations and relocate everyone within 60 days, Board Czar Tom Homan said on Thursday. Internal Florida emails cited by U.S. media indicate the site could be empty within days. The facility was built to hold up to 3,000 people and opened in July as part of the administration's mass deportation push. Homan said he disagrees with the ruling and defended the center's conditions and medical capabilities, calling it a clean, well-maintained transitional facility. Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt said the administration will comply with the court, but will not back down, describing the decision as the work of an activist judge and calling relocations an unnecessary burden on Homeland Security personnel. While the injunction halts expansion at the Everglades site amid lawsuits over living conditions and environmental harm, DHS is pressing ahead with other temporary builds, including a second Florida site dubbed Deportation Depot and an Indiana facility called the Speedway Slammer. Homan said ICE ultimately needs more brick and mortar capacity. Trump's July 4th budget law sets aside $45 billion for detention expansion. Funding, analysts say, could roughly support 116,000 new beds and allocates another $170 billion for immigration enforcement and border security, including $75 billion for ICE interior operations. Watch this.
I think the judge made a bad decision. I was there. And it's a transitional facility. It's not a long-term facility. It's a transitional facility. I think the governors were stepping up saying, let us help you, because they felt the wrath of the last 4 years of open borders. 4 years, 10.5 million people come in this country. Most of them released in the nation, right? And again, I'll say it again, not every illegal alien is a public safety threat, but many are. But we have the most secure border in the history of the nation today because of President Trump and the men and women of the Border Patrol and the men and women of ICE. This country is safer. And with illegal immigration down 94 to 96%, you all know this, there's been studies done to say 31% of women that make that journey get sexually assaulted by the cartels. Under Joe Biden, we had a record number of aliens die making that journey, over 4,000. That's a historic number of people dying making that journey. Historic number of people, 250,000, died from fentanyl poisoning because of that open border and fentanyl flowing across. Sex trafficking, women and children were at historic highs. Number of known suspected terrorists, over 400 just on the southern border, an historic high. So when President Trump has illegal immigration down 94 to 96%, how many women aren't being raped making that journey? How many children aren't dying making that journey? How many aliens aren't dying making that journey? How many Americans aren't dying right now from fentanyl overdoses because that border is secure? How many women and children aren't being sex trafficked in this country because of what President Trump did?
It's good to see Border Czar Tom Homan talking about the real issues, what really matters. A lot of people seem to think that Trump's mass deportation push is because of his hatred of immigrants, but no, it's because, unfortunately, as Border Czar Homan put it very well, he's not saying that every illegal immigrant is a public safety threat. Unfortunately, some are. Why are they in the country, and what is the United States government doing about it? We saw that during President Biden's administration, there wasn't a lot of vetting being done for those here on TPS status or for those entering the country illegally who are then being put up in hotels and funded by taxpayer dollars. And unfortunately, some of them are public threats, were and are. Because, of course, as you saw in Operation FAFO in Florida, there were at least 26 people involved in that child exploitation ring that weren't on ICE's or the USCIS's radar. That is a very big issue. So when we're seeing all of this impact and focus being put on it, I mean, you can take it from the words of Tom Homan. It's not that the administration considers every illegal immigrant a threat to public safety, that they consider them a criminal, but they're desperately trying to get to those who are, or those who've already been put in deportation proceedings, unfortunately. That is their main focus. Because when you're put in deportation proceedings and you're told to leave and you don't leave, that now becomes, again, you're defying a direct order from a court. You know, I mean, by technicality, entering the United States illegally is a civil offense, not a criminal offense. However, overstaying after a deportation order now becomes a criminal offense because you're defying direct orders from a United States judge. So you can see the differences in how the Trump administration is tackling these situations. Again, it's enforcement of the law, and again, trying to get these public safety, the people who are threats to public safety out of the country. Simple as. The White House has defended public calls to prayer after California Governor Gavin Newsom backed MSNBC host Jen Psaki's claim that prayer is not freaking enough in the wake of the Minneapolis church shooting that killed 2 children during a back-to-school mass. Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt called Psaki's remarks incredibly insensitive and disrespectful to the tens of millions of Americans of faith, adding, "We believe in the power of prayer, and I would encourage Ms. Psaki to pray for these families who need it right now more than ever." Responding to Vice President Vance's point that Americans can both pray and work to prevent violence, Governor Newsom replied, "Do both then." He had earlier echoed Psaki's critique, writing that students at Annunciation Catholic School were literally praying as they got shot at. As the clash spotlights a widening cultural divide over whether public calls to pray are meaningful or performative, for Christians, prayer is both a command and the starting point for action, comforting the brokenhearted, serving the wounded, and pursuing just, wise policies that protect the vulnerable. Let's take a look.
I have 2 questions for you. Sure. Democrats, including former White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Ray, attacked prayer and pushed gun control in the aftermath of yesterday's shooting. What's the White House's response to their comments?
Yes, I saw the comments of my predecessor, Ms. Psaki, and frankly, I think they're incredibly insensitive and disrespectful to the tens of millions of Americans of faith across this country who believe in the power of prayer, who believe that prayer works, and who believe that in a time of mourning like this, when beautiful young children were killed while praying in a church, it's utterly disrespectful to deride the power of prayer in this country, and it's disrespectful to the millions of Americans of faith. And I would encourage Ms. Psaki to pray for these families themselves who need it right now more than ever.
My second question for you is...
Well put by the press secretary, Ms. Leavitt. Christians, non-Christians, anybody who's listening, let no man deceive you. Prayer is vital for everything. I mean, the Bible says, in all things, through prayer and supplication, in everything. So through prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving in your heart, let your requests be made known unto God. And the peace that surpasses all understanding shall garrison your heart. I mean, of course, we know from the man of God, Pastor Chris, who again instituted the prayer-a-thon, where we've been praying for at least the last 2,056 days nonstop until the rapture of the church, how powerful prayer is. He spoke during the opening your Loveworld sessions about how the church was sleeping, not taking their duty properly, and how we were going to correct it. And as we prayed, we saw changes. I mean, these are changes that those people protesting couldn't fix, that politicians alone by themselves couldn't fix, but by the prayer of Christians, faithful Christians around the world engaging in fervent prayer, we saw changes happen. So let no man deceive you. Prayer works. Of course, Paul does say faith without works is dead, and which is why we saw the man of God, Pastor Chris, calling for political activism, calling for political action committees, calling for people to take action in what capacities they could to get notice to their governments, to push for what is right. We've seen that with GMOs. We've seen that with vaccines. We've seen that with different policies that the deep state were trying to institute. So we're not saying just pray and fold your hands. I mean, even the Bible doesn't say that. You know, you pray and then you do according to the prayer, because we know that God calls us to pray so that he may answer us. But you can't just sit there and say that prayer isn't enough. Prayer has always been enough. Prayer will always be more than enough. And as we pray, we also do. So again, I say, let no man deceive you. Pray. Governor Greg Abbott on Friday signed into law a mid-decade congressional map that Republicans say creates 5 additional GOP-leaning U.S. House districts, capping a tumultuous redistricting push that saw Texas Democrats flee the state to block a vote before ultimately returning for a second special session. Republican authors argued the plan improves Republican political performance while increasing competition and drawing 4 of the 5 new districts as majority Hispanic. This map ensures fairer representation, Abbott wrote on X. Democrats blasted the overhaul as illegal and racially discriminatory and said they will sue to overturn it. The fight in Austin has already spurred a blue state counterpunch. California Democrats approved their own map that adds 5 Democratic-leaning seats, though it must clear a November ballot measure before taking effect. Texas Republicans pressed ahead after the Democratic walkout collapsed. GOP leaders sought civil arrest warrants for absent members, and the House rejected a dozen Democratic amendments before final passage. Republicans say the Texas map is aimed at safeguarding their narrow U.S. House majority heading into the 2026 midterms and preventing a repeat of Democrats' 2018 gains. Democrats are expected to challenge the plan under the Voting Rights Act and the Constitution, setting up a fast-moving legal battle that could reshape House control and the fate of President Donald Trump's agenda ahead of next year's elections. Watch this.
Hi, this is Governor Greg Abbott. I'm about to sign the law that creates the one big, beautiful map that ensures fairer representation in the United States Congress for Texans. I want to thank Lieutenant Governor Patrick, Speaker Burrows, Senator King, Representative Todd Hunter, Representative Cody Vasut, and all of the legislature who stayed in the Capitol and got this law to my desk. Texas is now more red in the United States Congress.
And now, let's take a look at the weather update. And to end the news today, a quick recap of the headlines. Executive order to require voter ID nationwide underway. Trump clashes with Senate blue slip tradition as GOP chair defends practice. Chicago mayor signs order to resist potential Trump crackdown as feud with Pritzker intensifies. FBI probes surge of campus swatting hoaxes after first week chaos. And China and India pledge to be partners, not rivals. And that's News Plus for today. Remember to join us at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time tomorrow for News on the Hour. I'm TGK Andre. Good day, and God bless you.